Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Summer Pop at the AGO. We are so glad that you're here joining us this morning. My name is Melissa, and I'm joined by...
Me, I'm Olia. Welcome, everybody. We have so much in store for you today. Let's look at the slides. And we have a question, as we usually do every day. Tell us where you're joining us from. People join from all kinds of places. You can tell us what weather's like if you want, or anything else you can say. Okay, so let's see the slides. Summer Pop is a program that happens every day but Friday for the next 2 more weeks. Let's go to the next slide. Welcome to the Art Gallery of Ontario. I would like to do a land acknowledgement. The land the AGO is on is Mississauga Nishnawbe Territory, Mississauga. It is also governed by a treaty between the Mississauga of the Credit and the Canadian government. Toronto is Mississauga Nishnawbe Territory. It has also been occupied by other Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat confederacies. So what do we have in store for you today? Let's go to the next slide to find out. Today's theme is messages everywhere. Today, we have a very special prompt. It says, let us find letters, numbers, symbols, and words repeating around us and shape them into a positive message using a collage technique. So today is all about letters, numbers, symbols, and making new messages and new artworks out of them. So let's see what materials we'll need today. So today what you'll need is lots of magazines. That is what Melissa is going to show us right away what to do with. So any printouts. Yesterday, we also said that you can use flyers and pieces of packaging. We're looking for numbers and letters in them. You will also need markers and pencil crayons, scissors, glue stick, a pencil, some tape. We also have stamp making today. So if you have a piece of styrofoam or soft foam, pieces of cardboard to glue those onto, and a stamp pad or just markers, that would be great. We also need some construction paper in different colors if you have, or just white paper will also be useful. And Melissa, do we need tracing paper?
I don't think we need tracing paper today. No.
It's in the picture there, but I don't think we need it. So if you don't have tracing paper, do not worry. Mostly, what do you think is the most important thing we need right away to start with?
The most important things are 3 things. We need magazines, flyers or newspapers, something that has letters that you can cut out. The second is a pair of scissors, and the third is a glue stick.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we will start right away, I think, preparing to make an artwork. And Melissa is going to show us what's on her desk and what to do.
Yes.
Meanwhile, I'm going to tell her later where everybody's coming from. And Melissa, do you have another question for people?
I do have one. I'm wondering if people have a favorite letter. Maybe it's the first letter of your name. And I'm wondering if you notice some letters more than others. So some letters are more common or more popular, and we will notice them a bit more. And others, maybe like the letter X or Z, are less common. We don't see them as much in words. So I'm wondering if you have a favorite letter, and I'm wondering why it's your favorite letter.
Mm-hmm. I think letter Z, though it's not common, is really, really cool looking.
I do too. Yes. I also like the letter X. Names with X's, I think, are really cool. You don't see that very often either.
Yeah, I agree. So let's see Melissa's desk. So we probably don't need slides anymore.
So I have some magazines in front of me. I have my scissors and my glue stick here ready for me. And the first thing that this art project is about is really about looking and noticing. So you can see over here a little sneak peek of my example, but I'm going to talk about looking through magazines first. for different letters. So when I started this project, I noticed that the letter A was very common. I have a letter A at the end of my name. Everyone in my family that lives at my house has a letter A. So I thought I would start looking and I would see if I could find some letter A's. So here's a letter A. This page actually has lots of different letters on it. So we want to find letters of different sizes, but big letters will work best for this project. So we're making something called a collage, and a collage is a picture made up of all different parts. So I'm going to show you my example. So you can see that I've searched for the letter A and I have found lots and lots of them. And this took some time. So we're going to give you time today to search for some letters. And we're going to go back and forth, and Oli and I are going to talk about some artworks, and then we'll check in and see how everyone's doing. But the first step is to choose a letter, or even just looking through a magazine and trying to see if you noticed some letters more than others. And maybe that is the letter that you're going to choose to cut out. So I know that I want to use this letter A. So I might just rip this whole page out. So I know that these magazines are used just for collages, so no one's going to miss this if it's gone. And I'm going to free my letter from the page. So now I know that I just want to cut out this A, and I'm going to put this aside because maybe someone else is going to use these letters. So our artist this week that we're talking about is Andy Warhol, and we know that Andy Warhol loved to collaborate, and collaborate means to work together. So this is a great project for you to work together with someone in your family or someone that's with you right now. Maybe you both have your own magazine and you're both searching for the same letter and you're going to work together on building your collage. That would be a great way to collaborate on your artwork. So here is my letter A that I've cut out, my first one. And I think I'm going to cut it out a little bit closer to the shape. I don't need the windows and the things in the background. I just want this letter A. So I'm going to take my scissors, oops. And when I'm cutting, I really use both hands. So the hand that's holding my magazine piece of paper, it's kind of going to do the driving, and my scissors are going to stay quite still. So my scissors are really just opening and closing, and I'm moving my paper. I'm using this hand, my non-cutting hand, to steer the paper around. My scissors are really staying in the same spot. So my hand is going to move my paper around, and my hand is going to move my paper again to go around the bottom. And I'm going to turn again, and I'm going to cut. So here is my first letter A that I've cut out. So I'm going to put that over to the side. And then I'm going to keep searching for letters. I do have some already cut out, but I'm going to see if I can find some more in this magazine that I'm working on. And so we're going to give you some time to look for your letters in the magazines or newspapers that you might have with you. And while you're doing that, Olia, do you want to talk about one of our images today?
I think not yet. I was really feeling like watching you cut.
Yeah.
Kind of giving us time to cut ourselves. And I was going to tell you if there's any questions and also tell you where people are coming from.
Of course, I forgot about that part. I'm so excited about hearing about Joyce Wieland. But let's hear where people are from. I would love to hear where people are from.
Okay, so people are coming to us from Markham, Statema, London, Ontario, Peterborough, where it's still overcast. Mrs. K's grade 1 summer school is joining us.
Wow.
People are from Richmond Hill. People are saying hello from Brampton. Some people saying that they love letter A because it's the first letter of my name, and letter S because you know why? Because it's so majestic. Other
Ooh,
people say that they love letter A and everyone in their family has a name that starts with letter A. Uh,
wow.
some people say that they can spell their name Grace, Grace. People are worried that they won't find a big letter that like what you found. And some people are worried that they don't have styrofoam.
That's okay if you don't have styrofoam. The styrofoam step we're going to get to a little bit later on. And if you don't have styrofoam, that's okay. If you have thin craft foam, I'm going to hold a piece up. This will work as well. If you have bubble wrap, any of these things you can use instead of your thin styrofoam. If you happen to have one of these, a styrofoam plate, this I think was from some corn that we bought at my house. So this thin styrofoam will work as well. But that step is a little bit later on.
Yeah, so I can tell you telling where people are coming from: Scarborough, Edmonton, Toronto, Ottawa, Cologne, Germany. People are also joining us from US, where it is, I think it was said it was raining, but I'll double check.
Wow.
People are also saying they want to use all kinds of letters. Do they have to be any letters? Can they be any letters? Do they have to use their own name, or can it be a movie name?
These are great questions. It doesn't have to be one letter. In fact, I have an example where I used 2 different letters. I'll show you that one now. So in this example, I've used 2 different letters and I've made some words, a word that repeats. Can you see that, Olia?
Yes.
I made the word hi. So I searched for H's and I's. And then if you see these waving hands, that was my stamp. So we'll talk about that a little bit later.
This is so cool, Melissa. And I love how it says hi to everybody who's joining us.
Yeah.
So I think we're almost ready to go to the slideshow and kind of enjoying that work while we cutting more.
That sounds great. I wanted to say too, don't be worried if you can't find big letters. That's okay. You can work with small letters too. So here's my example with all my A's, and you can see that some of my letters are quite small. I did choose big letters because I knew that I would be showing you this on camera, but I think it would be really cool to have tiny little letters. You could even work on a tiny, tiny piece of paper and have all those tiny letters if you wanted to. There's lots of different ways that you can do this.
I love how letters A that you've got are all so different from one another. And we want to see the slide where there's an artwork. So maybe we can see the next slide in a second. So let's go to the next slide and let's take a look at this. There's many letters here and many of them repeat. This is an artwork by Joyce Wieland. It is called Canada, and it's made in 1972 from sewn and filled fabric. The artwork type is fabric assemblage, and I love how the letters are made from fabric and are soft. You can see the very first letter from the top left corner, if you read that way, which many people do, don't know in all cultures. It starts with A, C, A, N, A, D. Akanad, da, Canada, Canada. And I can see that it repeats the same word, like Melissa's word that said hi and hi and hi and hi and hi. This one is trying to repeat many times the word that spells a place, Canada. Look how many letters A's are there, letters N's. Letter D is slightly different color. It's a little bit more kind of beige or yellow and orangey than the other letters, which are all white. The whole image makes quite an amazing composition where we can, if you look carefully, we would notice diagonal repetition of letters. If you look kind of from the top and start with an A and don't look in a straight line, but look on the diagonal across, down one and to the side one, you will see letters A going in the diagonal, and same for the other letters too. That's so cool. So for now, we can look at this artwork for a little bit, just for a second, and look at what Melissa's doing. You can see Melissa's desk and what she's making. And while we're working, we were thinking that it would be really great to show you looking for letters everywhere. So I was outside and I was thinking that I wanted to show you how to find letters outside, but I just have a photograph. So I'm going to show you me looking for some letters while Melissa is cutting and while you are cutting out the letters from different pieces of paper, magazines, flyers, etc. So I'm going to disappear for a second and appear with some photos. You can see this is a picture of the city. This is a city nearby where I live. This is downtown Toronto. We see lots of construction, lots of train tracks and bridges and signage and cranes. But I also can spy letters. I love how Melissa's character in day one was a spy. And this is kind of like a game of I Spy. Can you find different letters? Can you see a letter Z in here? Can you see a letter M? Can you see number 4? So I love playing this game and finding the letters. And sometimes I draw right on top of the photo, but if I'm outside, I might just even trace them with my finger or with my hand. So I'll show you different letters that I found in this picture really quickly, just for a sec. So you can see I found letter S in the railroad, letter A in the metal, I guess it's like a little overhead scaffolding that holds the lights for the train. I found letter H in the unfinished building. Number 4 in the cranes that lift things up as buildings are being built. On the side of one building, I saw a lot of letters Z, Y, Y, Z is a airport code for Toronto. And of course, I found the letter I in the CN Tower itself. So doing stuff like that was really fun. And finding letters in the city and in the life around you is what inspires our next artwork. So let's take a look at the slideshow and see the artwork that Melissa and I really want you to see. So let's go. We've seen this artwork where letters repeat, but the next artwork is by a famous American pop artist, Robert Indiana. It is called the Demuth American Dream No. 5. It is made in 1963, and it's a painting. Robert Indiana was really inspired by an artwork that he saw by another artist. The name of that painting was Figure 5 in Gold. The artist was Charles Demuth. Charles Demuth was a painter who was inspired to paint his painting of number 5 by a poem written by his friend, poet William Carlos Williams. I'm going to read you a poem, and it's a poem that the poet wrote by pulling out a sheet of paper from his pocket and writing it down really quickly after he saw a fire truck on the street on his way to visit his friend artist in the studio. So here's the poem. Among the rain, and lights, I saw the figure 5 in gold on a red fire truck, moving, tense, unheeded, to gong clangs, siren howls, and the wheels rumbling through the dark city. So the poem inspired the painter to paint the first painting of the figure 5 in gold. And Robert Indiana was inspired by both and by the billboards that he saw around him to paint this 5 square paintings of letter 5 inside a circle, similar but different. So, Melissa, what do you think, or what do you notice in this painting that we want to notice today?
I see not only letters that repeat, but I also see some numbers and some symbols that are repeating. I also notice that some are bigger than others. So I'm looking at the number 5, and I can see that some of the 5s are quite large. And then it almost looks like they fade back into the background, and I could see some smaller 5s. So if you look in the yellow, it's a yellow 5. And if you look in the belly of the 5, the curved part, you can see another number 5. I can see stars, and I can see 5 stars, 3 going down the middle and 1 on either side. What do you see, Olia?
I see 3-letter words repeating 5 times. If you look at the bottom, it says hug, 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 and hug. And it also says other words. And in the center, the words don't repeat. But I love these kind of different. Number 5 is not only the number that's painted or the figure 5, it's also part of the pattern. Some words appear 5 times. There is, as Melissa said, 5 stars. I think this is such an incredible painting, but it's also inspired by things that artists and poets saw and experienced outside, which was that kind of the light on the fire truck and being startled. And even I feel like Robert Indiana is able to make the sound, because that 5, as it's getting smaller against the red, feels like maybe the sound of the fire engine getting louder or getting quieter, or doing it loud and quiet again. This is so amazing. So what are we gonna make based on this? Let's take a look at Melissa's desk.
Okay, so I'm still cutting out my A's. I think I'm going to stop cutting out. So if you can see my tabletop, you can see my collection of letter A's. So I didn't cut all of these out now. Some I had cut out before. And you can see I have some that are larger. Here's that very first one that we cut out together. And then I have some that are tiny and very small. And what I remembered when I was searching for these letters was that every letter has an uppercase and a lowercase. So a capital letter and a small letter. So I have some A's that are capital A's. Let's do this, like this one. And I have some letter A's that are lowercase, like this one. And what I also started to notice is that we know that these are all the letter A, but some of them look a little bit different. We can still recognize that it's an A, but the way the letters are drawn are different. So here I have a letter A that's very square and boxy. And then here I have a letter A that's very pointy. It has a point on the top. I also noticed as I was searching for the letter A that the best place to find them was usually in advertisements. If you're looking for big letters, advertisements are the best place to look because advertisers want you to notice the name of what they're trying to sell. So a lot of these letter A's are from advertisements. And I also noticed that advertisements repeat in different magazines. So you might see the same advertisement in more than one magazine. And then I noticed that I was cutting those A's out and they were the same. So I have two in my hand. Let me put them side by side. So these are from two different magazines, but the letter is the same because it was the same print. I also noticed that there are words that have more than one A in them. So I found some tiny, this was a sentence, and I cut out all the tiny little A's from that. So we have repetition. We have things that repeat. We have the letter A that's repeating. We have small and large that are repeating. And we have some of the same letters. I found another one that's the same. Oh, here's one. So again, this was from two different magazines and I was able to find the same letter A.
So when we say the same letter A, there's also a name for that kind of thing where you, some letter A's have equal sized lines, all the lines are equally thick. Some other letters A have one line that is much thicker than the others. Some have really curvy lines that they're composed from. And what we call the different shapes of the way letters can look, we call them fonts.
That's right. And there are thousands of different fonts.
Mm-hmm.
And they all have different uses. So some fonts are easier to read in a book, and some are easier to read on a screen, a computer screen. So those different fonts all have different jobs, and those different fonts can also make you feel a different way. Some fonts that are maybe very bold, all the letters are in capitals, and all the letters are very thick and dark. Those might be strong, that might give you a strong feeling. And the message that they communicate might be a strong message. You might have other letters that, I have one here. So this was from an oat milk advertisement. And you can see that in the center of the A, the person that drew this font drew little oat flakes as the center of the A. So they can be drawn in lots of different ways and they can make you feel different ways. So I have a few more A's that I want to cut out a little bit more carefully. So this one I have lots of space around. And I thought I'm not going to cut right against it because I like this red color. And I'm not cutting out the centers of my A because that's kind of tricky with scissors. But I'm going to cut around. So remember I told you that trick where your non-cutting hand is doing the steering. And then your scissors are really staying in one place. Moving that aside. Let's do another one. So my scissors are really going to stay right here in this position. And they're going to cut. And I'm going to use my other hand to steer my paper around. And I'm going to steer my paper around again. And I have another one cut out. So I have a couple more that I'm going to cut out a little bit more closely. And then we can talk about how we're going to make our collage, how we're going to arrange all of these letters that we've cut out. So I hope that you're able, you've been able to find some letters or maybe more than one letter or maybe even numbers at home for your own collage. Let me move these. I found a very tiny A here. And then one more here. So my cutting hand is staying in the same spot and my driving hand is moving my paper around for me. There we go. Okay, so I feel I've got a good collection of letters. Now we will need glue. I'm using a glue stick. If you have white glue at home, that will work too. If you have clear tape, that will even work. And then I'm going to choose a piece of paper. So I have a few different colors. You could use a white piece of paper if that's what you have. And now I'm going to think about how I want my letters to be arranged on my paper. Let me move everything up so you can see. Okay. So when I worked on my example, I decided that I wanted all of my letters to be overlapping. I wanted some to be small and some to be larger. It almost looks like the smaller letters are fading a little bit further back into the distance. And then some of the bigger letters will be closer to us. I also, you might notice, have some letters that are not cut out from magazine. And I'm going to talk about that. That's where our stamp making comes in. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. So for this one, I arranged all my letters going across, overlapping and filling my page. And when I showed this to Olia, the first thing Olia said was, ah, all those letters looked like they were saying, ah, they were all sort of moving. And I don't know, Olia, do you think were they shouting at you?
I think some were louder and it was going kind of going like, ah. Some were louder, some were quieter.
Yeah. I thought about the letter A, I noticed it, and then I thought, oh, letter A could also be for Andy Warhol. It could be for art. It could be for AGO. So there's lots of communication in this piece. So this is my first arrangement that I worked on. So, and then I had more letter A's and I started playing around with them. And I liked the way they looked when I arranged them into a circle. I thought all those points from the A's pointing into the center could also make a shape, a circle or a ring, but it's also making another letter. It looks a little bit like the letter O. You could even arrange your letters into the shape of the letter that it is. So you could arrange your letter A's, maybe I'll turn my paper this way. You could even arrange your A's into the shape of a letter A. So maybe all of these are balancing on top of each other. Maybe some are going down. So I'm choosing my big letters so that it's easy for you to see at home. Maybe this one's balancing there. Maybe there's a teeny tiny one underneath here. Whoops. Maybe another larger one. And then, of course, the letter A has two lines going up and down, but it also has, it needs a line going across. So maybe I'll have some of my letters arranged going this way. What do you think, Olia? Does that look like an A made of A's?
Yes, and it looks like almost like a ladder you can try and climb.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. I like that. So when you have arranged your letters, the thing I like to do is I like to play with my letters and see how they look in different ways before I glue anything down. So once I'm happy with how my artwork looks, then I'm ready to start to glue them down. So I always like to think of it kind of like a puzzle. And when I'm gluing something that's kind of small, and I know that I have lots of things to glue, the way I like to use my glue stick is standing up and down, and then I place my thing that I'm gluing on top of the glue stick, and then I just move it around with my finger. That way I'm getting glue on the back of my shape, and I know that I'm getting all the edges because I want these to stick down quite well. Instead of going this way, where here's my letter A, and I'm going to flip it over on my table. And this way might be easier for you, and that's totally fine. You should do it that way if it's easier. But I find this way sometimes when I'm gluing it, it slides around on the table. I can't hold onto it quite as nicely. My table sometimes gets really sticky, which is okay too. But I find that if I take my shape and I push it on top of my glue stick, then I can control where the glue goes a little bit more. So there's my next one. I'm curious to know, and I hope that you'll tell us later on when our chat comes on again in a little while, if anyone has searched for letters to make a word or repeating words. I'm also curious to know how people arranged their letters on their page. I like the way this looks. I have a tiny letter A, and it's almost, this almost looks like a house protecting this big A, protecting this tiny little A. So now I've flipped my glue over, and I can see that, oh, I've pressed too hard. There we go. Let's see, this one will go this way. I think maybe I need one more on this side.
Melissa, some people were saying that they were cutting out quotations and whole words. And I wonder if they cut the letters apart or maybe even found the same letters but of different shape that make that quote. Or if they rearranged the letters on the page to make a new kind of composition.
Oh, I'm curious about that too. There are so many different ways that you can use things that you've cut out from magazines or newspapers. And this is actually one of my favorite things to do.
I really loved making one earlier as we were talking about it.
Yes, Oli, I'm going to show yours actually, because you did just what we're doing here in the example I'm working on. And in my circle arrangement, Olia made an example. And if you look in the corner, it gives you a hint. You might not need a hint. You might see it right away. But Olia, you used the letter Y. And I
That's
see
the first one I wanted to use. And then it's actually because as I was walking and taking pictures to show how you can find letters outside, I noticed that lots of trees have letter Y in them when you look at them. So I realized that I wanted to cut out letter Y and see if I can create almost like a drawing of a tree. But then I also mixed in some other letters. Some of them to make a word, some of them to put an apple or a leaf at the end of the branch.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I had to glue them kind of like touching one another at the ends of the letter Y.
I really like that. I think that you can really see that they are trees. And I do always notice the letter Y in trees because the branches of trees do often make that shape.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to glue a few more of these on. So moving it along my glue stick. Here's that big letter A that we cut out together. Something else that I did in my first example is I layered some of the letters. So I have a teeny tiny letter A on my finger. You can see there's a little bit of the letter E there too. Maybe I'll cut that off. So this one is very tiny, if you can see it. Just on the tip of my finger. Maybe this one I'll overlap onto one of the bigger ones. Maybe I'll put this, let's put it on this one. So I have it there, can you see it? Tiny baby A on a big A.
So cute.
Okay. Let's glue a few more. So the next thing that we're going to talk about after our collage is making some stamps. But I wonder, Olia, we
want to see some artworks?
Yeah, should we have a look at those artworks? What do you think?
Yeah, let's start the slideshow and see a couple of more artworks by both Robert and Deanna and by General Idea. So we'll just wait a second to the slideshow. So this one inspired lots of things we were making. Putting letters inside letters or behind one another is what Melissa was doing, and also arranging letters in a circle. But Robert and Deanna also made an artwork that we will see next. Next slide. So Robert and Deanna made this artwork. It's called Number 4. And some of this artwork he made as a print, some of it he made as a sculpture. It says Number 4, but I can't find Number 4, but I can find letters. There's L and O on top of V and E. I noticed too that the letter O is turned sideways so that inside negative space, the skinny oval inside it is pointing towards V. Robert and Deanna made many versions of this composition where he used a famous font called Didon, which what gave these letters their shape. It was a modern font and different from the Renaissance fonts that would have been used as well. And he organized the letters in his own way and then played with positive and negative space around them. Some of the original compositions that he made as a greeting card and then turned into a very large sculpture made from Corten steel. Original colors that he made, and he printed them in many different colors. The original colors, the very first composition like this that said love that he made was of red and green and blue. And those colors were something that he said reminded him of his dad, who worked at a gas station called Phillips 666. And the colors were green and red, and against the blue sky, he said this color combination reminded him of his dad. But in this artwork, we see him using red and black and yellow. Let's see the next artwork, because I think we'll see something different. So this artwork, we see a very similar design. So Robert and Deanna designed using a font, and his composition of 4 letters, making a square, said love. This is artists, 3 artists who were a collective named General Idea. These artists did their own version and distributed as stamps. You can see these are actually stamps. They also made wallpaper and posters, but the message that they had was a little bit different. I think I have a quote of what A Bronson said about this artwork later on. This artwork says AIDS, and AIDS was a disease that people didn't want to talk about at the time. The artists made AIDS into this design that repeated love to get this word everywhere, to talk about, in a way, almost like an emergency that was happening all around them. They wanted to put it everywhere, and they did put it on stamps and everywhere, broadcasting it almost. So they used a design that was inspired by another artist, by Robert Indiana's Love, but they made their own message that spoke loud and clear. They made it in many formats too. So maybe let's go back to Melissa's desk and talk about letter combinations. Letter combinations can be powerful.
Thank you, Olia. So Olia was talking about letter combinations and stamps. I'm going to show you this example again, where I made the letter or the word hi repeating, and then I wanted a symbol that would represent the word hi. So I thought a waving hand is a great symbol for hi. Usually waving your hand comes along with saying hi. So here I have hi repeated, and I have a stamp. So let's talk a little bit about how to make a stamp. I'll show you this example again. So on this one, I've made a stamp. I've made a few stamps actually of the letter A to add. And this is a great thing to do if you don't have lots of A's and you want to fill your paper, if that's what you've chosen to do, you can add some on your own with a stamp. On this example, I've used the stamp again, but I've stamped on different colors of paper and then cut those A's out as well. So there's a few different ways that you can use your stamps. So here's my collage, my letter A of A's. And I think we're going to add some more to that. But to make a stamp, I'm going to start with a little piece of cardboard. And if you have stamps at home, sometimes they're on a wooden block like this. This is one of Olia's stamps. And they have a raised part. The wooden block is the part that you use to hold, to use the stamp. So the cardboard is going to be the same thing. This is going to be the piece that we use to hold to make our stamp. And now we need to make something that is raised. So on the table next to me, you can see that here are my letter A stamps. This one I've cut out from a piece of styrofoam. So just like this tray that I showed you, I know that I want a flat part. I don't need these edges. So I'm going to cut those edges off. Maybe I'll just cut one off so I can go quickly. And then I know that this part is flat, and that's going to be perfect for my stamp. So maybe I'll cut out a square. And this is tricky to cut. So you might need to go slowly, or you might even need to ask someone to help you.
And Melissa, I think you want to also save a little bit for tomorrow, right?
Absolutely. If you're joining us tomorrow, and if you have any of these, please bring them with you or save them for tomorrow because we'll need those. If you don't have this styrofoam, remember you can use this craft foam to make a stamp too. So this one is made using the styrofoam, and this one is made using this thin craft foam. So the important thing to remember if you're stamping a letter or a number is that when you stamp, it will be in reverse. So that's okay for some letters that are symmetrical. So the letter A, the letter I, O, U, what else? V, M sometimes, and W, X, but a letter like B, E, or C When you stamp it, it will be backwards. So you want to think about that. So the letter H, I know that this will stamp. So when I stamp it, I'm going to flip it over. And I wrote this on the back to remind myself which way my stamp goes. When you stamp it, let's do an example. Here's my stamp pad. I'm going to take my letter H and I'm going to get some ink. I think I need a bit more. Here's my stamping piece of paper. So here is my inked letter H. When I press, I know that it can't be backwards because it's the same, it's symmetrical, it's the same on both sides. Let's try my letter A. So I'm pressing onto my stamp pad. And there's my letter A. If I do a letter B, let's do a letter C to make it easy. I'll draw a C first. Oops, on my craft foam. Drawn a letter C. And I'm going to cut it out. So here's my letter C. Now I'm going to glue it onto my piece of cardboard. And I'm going to use my glue stick, which is here. And if you use a glue stick, this will dry pretty quickly. But if you notice that it's sliding around, you might need to give it a few minutes to dry. Okay, so here's my letter C. Let's see what happens. I'm pressing it onto my stamp pad. Let's see. My C is backwards. Now the letter C, the thing we can do with this is if we flip it around this way and stamp, now we have it going the right way around. That won't work with all letters. So if you have a letter that you want to stamp, it might be a good idea to practice, let me get a thicker marker, drawing that letter forwards. Say your letter was B, and then practice drawing it backwards. And backwards is the way you want to cut it out for your stamp so that when you print it, it will be flipped over and it will be the right way around. So I have my styrofoam. Let's say I'm going to do another letter A. So I think that I can cut it without drawing it first, but you might want to draw your letter first. Oops. And A is tricky because I know that I have that little triangle shape in the center. So maybe I'll draw that to give myself a guide of where to cut. Okay, so I'm going to carefully push my scissors in, and I'm going to snip away at that. So when I was making my letter H and my letter I, they were quite easy to make because there were no little center parts to cut out. Same thing, I'm going to put some glue on the back. Put that onto my piece of cardboard, which is like our block, the thing that we're going to hold on to. And let's see how this one works. I'm going to press onto my stamp pad to make sure I have some ink. I do. And then maybe I'll go right over top of some of my letters here.
Melissa, while you're adding them over top, I think our chat is live. And because we asked people to tell us what they're making, I am going to tell you what people are putting in the chat.
Yes, please. I
So,
would love to hear.
Kelly says, I put a picture of a bunny behind my collage of letter B. B is
Oh, that's
because I
great.
thought B is for bunny. Some people are just saying nice and wow about the collage. But Chanel says that I made a pushing the cat out of letter P.
Wow. That's
Some people
great.
said my collage looked like a game of Scrabble with trees. And I think it looked that way because I was lazy. I was only cutting kind of squares with letter Y inside.
But Olia,
Yeah.
I think that it still looks like the branches of a tree.
I know if you followed the line inside, but otherwise they were just kind of little squares. Yeah.
So I wanted to share that if you don't have a stamp pad, or if your stamp pad is a little bit dry, another way that you can put ink onto your stamps is with a marker. So this is what I did at home because I found that my stamp pads were suddenly all dry. So I would just color with a marker. And I can see that maybe I need to choose a different marker. So I'm adding ink with my marker instead of pressing it onto my stamp pad. And then this will work too. Maybe I'll put one in the center here so you can see it. So I'm pressing down firmly. There we go. And there I have my letter A. And then of course, as I said, you can stamp onto different pieces of paper and cut those out as well. So maybe you had trouble finding enough letter A's or numbers or symbols or whichever you chose in a magazine. And you could also make a really cool artwork this way with the A's that you've made. You can also choose to combine them like I did in this one. So there are lots of ideas. Olia, is anyone at home sharing any more of their ideas?
Some people are saying that they want to make kind of a fast food sign, but they cannot decide which one. Some people are making stamps of letters that together can make their name. And some people are asking us questions, like there's a question, who did Andy Warhol collaborate with? And I'm going to start thinking. I think Billy Name was one of the collaborators, and Billy Name helped Warhol make everything in the studio space called the Factory Silver by covering it with tinfoil.
Right.
Did Warhol collaborate with Basquiat?
They were working at the same time. That's a really good question, Olia. I think that maybe we should find out, and hopefully if people tune in tomorrow, we can have
Yeah,
the
I know
answer to
that
that.
Warhol collaborated with dancers.
That's
In the Childs to make his movies and with actors, and he would ask people to pose for him. And often they had a lot of agency when posing, therefore, kind of, actually giving Andy Warhol really, really specific images of themselves. But
And
definitely, Andy Warhol also made almost everything collaboratively, where he had people help him make the work as well. So all the silk screen printing was done almost by teams of people. And at the factory, he had people, I think like Gerard Milanga would have helped him with filming and photography. Other people would help him silk screen print. There were so many people around Andy Warhol all the time. Everybody was working on art.
And of course, we know from yesterday that he also collaborated with his mom on those cat drawings that we talked about yesterday.
Yeah, with Julia Warhola.
That's right. I have my handprint stamp, and I thought that I would, maybe I'm going to print some hands on my collage of the letter A that we've made. Let's see, I'll move this one to the side. Flip this one over. Maybe I'll have some waving hands in different spots.
We're almost close to the end of the class, and I wonder if we should do a few things. One thing is I wanted to remind people what to have ready for tomorrow.
Yes.
And then I think we also wanted them to do something outside today.
Yeah. What do you think? What should we do first? Why don't we talk about what we need for tomorrow?
Yes.
And then we'll let people watch a little video to give them some ideas of how they can continue this project outside.
Mm-hmm.
So tomorrow, we'll also need some things collected from outside, won't we, Olia?
Yes. So we actually want you to go outside to find leaves. They could be tree leaves or plant leaves. And ideally, they're kind of sturdier kind. So I was walking to the Art Gallery of Ontario today, where Melissa and I are teaching, and I saw already a broken branch of maple leaf, and it had probably 80 leaves on it. I don't know if the wind broke it or if it was trimmed by the city workers who were making sure trees don't touch power lines, but I ended up with a whole bunch of leaves. I'm also thinking at home, I have mint leaves and parsley leaves. So really any leaves, but the stronger they are, the better. And I'm keeping mine in water so they don't go limp. So they're actually in the vase, you can see.
I think a really good reminder for everyone as well is that we don't ever want to pick leaves off of a tree or a plant. We want to try to find leaves that have fallen that are on the ground. Of course, if it's in your yard or around your house and it's okay, and you ask the grown-ups that live there, you might be able to pick them. But it's really best to find leaves like Olia did that have fallen on the ground, that the tree doesn't need anymore.
Or leaves you were about to eat, like a parsley leaf.
Yeah, sure, sure. I have a mint plant, so maybe I'll bring some of my mint leaves tomorrow.
And you'll need that piece of styrofoam from a tray, I think, as well.
Yes. Yes.
And markers.
And markers, yep. And some paper.
Yes, see our list that's on the website. We're just making an extra reminder of what we want you to do. And also for the rest of today or any time this week, we want you to work on something outside.
Yeah, so we have a video. I made a little video to hopefully inspire you to go outside and have a look around you. Being an artist, part of being an artist is to look around and to notice things, and maybe notice things that other people might not notice. And this is so easy to do. I know that you can do this at home too. So why don't we show the video, Olia? What do you think?
Yes, let's see the video.
Hi everyone. For our project today called Messages Everywhere, I thought we could go for a little walk through my neighborhood and have a look if we can find any letters, numbers, or symbols that repeat, and use that as inspiration for our art making. Let's go. Thanks for joining me on a walk through my neighborhood. I hope you're inspired to have a look where you live to find things that you see again and again. There's so much that we can find if we just take the time to look. Have fun.
That's so amazing, Melissa. I feel like there were so many amazing fonts and you found so many letters A, each so different that one could probably write poems by collecting letters outside.
That's a great idea. Yeah, there were so many different ones. And once I started to look, I noticed more and more and more and more. So I really hope that people will do the same when they're walking through their neighborhood or where they live and see what they can find.
People say it's cool to make a video like that, or I say just even take photos.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the way you show the photos could say words, or it could be many different fonts of the same letter.
You could even bring a sketchbook with you and draw all the different letters that you see.
Yes, so many ways to notice and so many ways to record. So I feel like we're at the end of today, and I want to show you the last slide. And that slide just says TY, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to share the work with us. Melissa and I look for it every day. For anything posted with the hashtag SummerPopAGO. And you can visit the link that's in the chat. That link can take you to weekly Herschel art challenges and a chance to win a Herschel prize pack. And we want to remind you that our program is generously supported by our main sponsor, Herschel, and our family programming at the Art Gallery of Ontario is also sponsored by the Mariano Elia Foundation, Janice Rotman, and Upper Canada College. See you all tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, everyone.